No other conservative in our nation has ever had the ability to reach out to younger generation like Charlie. There's an innate yearning in all of us from the moment we're born to accomplish and achieve something in this life. There was a time in this nation where significance and greatness is measured by the contribution and sacrifice we made to our world, where we ask not what we can do for what our country can do for us, but what we can do for our country. This American spirit, if you can call it that, is what made planes fly higher, ships that went further and deeper, cars that made our life easier and more fun, and faith so strong that it built nations and inspired greatness. There was a time when we inspired individuals to fly to the moon, write songs that touched the heart. There was a time when we sacrificed our children on the altar of freedom so other nations and people can know what it means to be free. But 3 decades ago, something went off in the minds of the liberal. So began decades of preparations and indoctrination. By the millions, we raise our children and put them as clean slates at the feet of warped individuals with twisted minds. Our children have become tools for the liberal, the progressive, to indoctrinate and cultivate for power gain, weapons to be unleashed to the world. Our children, from the moment they're born, are programmed by news, media, entertainment industries, and educators on what to eat, drink, wear, how to talk, how to behave, what to drive, who to marry. But the greatest and most insidious thing that they ever did to our children was program them how to think. The left warped them with gender dysphoria and climate change and social injustice. Instead of finding their value in the content of their character and merits, they now find their value in their gaming skill, their gender dysphoria, and narcissistic tendencies and mental illness. This week, a lot of people, if you turn on the YouTube and other form of in the internet, you see a lot of people have been fired because they supported the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But the most revealing things I saw in most of those videos was that most of those people were teachers, educators, administrators, college professors. In schools and colleges, they teaching our children how to hate. And what they can't control, they need to destroy. This is the new world order that they are trying to make. And if you think I'm off the cuff, look at Charlie Kirk's assassin. Look at his family. They were all conservative, Republican. But after years of school, look at what he become. His father was so ashamed that even after 27 years in law enforcement, he quit. Liberal wants power. That's all that's important to them, power at any cost. That's why when our children were born, we decided to homeschool them. Well, my wife did all the work. It was hard work, but we threw away the TV, we threw away all the games and everything, and we never looked back. And now all my children are, the last one's almost grown, he's in college now, but the sacrifice was worth it. Because I'd rather make the sacrifice than watch my children grow up to be shadows of people that God had made them to be. But we have a rot in America right now, and they need to be addressed. And that's what Charlie did. When he traveled all the university and he debate people, why? Because he want to expose them to the truth. We have a problem in America and it need to be addressed. A few days ago, we talked about immigration. That system is so broken. There's no way to fix that. President Trump is trying to put a handle on it, but it's a difficult problem that it's taken us decades to get here. But he's trying. You know, one of the problem we have in the United States today is the educational agency. We have three levels. We have federal, state, and local educational agency. It's a bloated bureaucracy that serves other interests rather than our children. Why do we have to have all these levels and spend all these money instead of putting it where the children need it? We want an agency to help educate our children, not to indoctrinate them, not to teach them about gender, and certainly not when they are confused about their gender identity. And all children go through that at one time or another. You don't mutilate them because they having a problem trying to figure out who they are. You got adults today that can't figure that one out. We just want you to teach our children reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and let us take care of the personal issue. Let us take care of what our children need to be. But no, we have two of the most powerful union in the United States today: the the teachers union, and they have two of them, and both of them are very left wing, and they yield tremendous amount of power. They not only determine local, state, but even federal election because of the members they have. They determine congressmen. They determine even president of the United States. And in this term, President Trump is wisely trying to get rid of that. And man, he's creating a voucher program that you can send your kid to a private school. And I think hopefully one day they'll allow that for homeschooling, where you can do that for your own children. Because we pay taxes into the system, we pay taxes, property tax and all kind of taxes. Yet when we homeschool, nobody supports us. And that needs to be changed. And I think one day soon, I think if President Trump work on it, they'll address that problem. And then we have a lot of other problems. And these are the things that Charlie Kirk tried to address in our nation, because these are problems. And because he addressed it, they don't like it. We have defund the police. Who in their right mind would live in a society without police? I know in America right now, I wouldn't want to live in any city in America without the police. You have people with evil intent, mental illness, and you want to defund the police. Yet the same politician that urged for defund the police, they have security detail that protect them. But then they want to defund the police for the rest of us. One of the other problems we have is they have no cash bail. And a lot of places now, they don't even have bail. You have repeat criminal offender and you have no bail to hold them. And so what do you do when you have a system like that? You have people that come out here and commit crime time and time again because they know until that first one is adjudicated in court, all they're going to do is let them out again because they hadn't been convicted of a crime. So some of them, their rap sheet is, 6 inches thick, but then you can't do anything to them because they haven't been convicted of a crime. And even when they do, they're going to let them out anyway. We have a serious problem with that today, and they want to put that underneath, sweep that under the rug. I have a friend of mine, she was raped 8 years ago. 8 years ago, she was raped in Harris County. But the dockets are so thick that she hadn't made it to court yet. And her perpetrator is out there doing God knows what he's doing. But 8 years, because there's so much on the docket they can't prosecute. So all these criminals are running loose, no bail. My brother, walking on the street of downtown Houston, and high school kids were let out, and you got a little boy, 15 years old and 150 pounds, walk by him and just sucker punched him. Almost put him in the hospital. When they called the police, the first thing he said was, "Did you do something to the kid? If you touch him, you're going to be prosecuted." This is a 15-year-old, 150-pound kid just out there beating up and hitting people with no repercussion. We have a problem. That's why you look at from Washington, D.C. to Miami and New York to L.A., you got a bunch of teenage hooligans running the street committing crime with, with, with no fear. We have a problem. You look at the 20, go Google it up, 20 of the most crime city or dangerous city in America. And I guarantee you, 19 out of 20 are Democrat leftist control. 19 out of 20. That's not a coincidence. That's a plan. You look at the 20th crime-filled city in America, and you look at their agenda, and they're all controlled by Democrat or liberal. Look at California. When I first came to America, that was the most beautiful state in the Union. And now it's a shadow, of what it used to be. They solved the shoplifting overnight. They solved the shoplifting problem. They made a new law that said if you shoplift under $950, you won't be prosecuted. The police won't even press charges on it. So you got a bunch of criminal gangs that bring calculators to businesses, and they actually punch in the number of what they steal and put it in their basket to make sure it doesn't go over $950. It's insane. And that's why a lot of national businesses are leaving California. That's not what I say, not what Charlie Kirk said. This is what's happening in America. And I love the way the Democrats solved the homeless problem. In one night, California wiped out all the homeless problem in California. That's incredible. They just call them displaced. So now they're not homeless anymore. They solved it in one night. They spent $30 billion in the last decade to tackle homeless problem, and they have yet to build one single home or help anybody, and homelessness increased fivefold. You spend $30 billion on a high-speed train that goes to nowhere, and you haven't laid 1 foot of concrete. San Francisco, I used to visit that city. Beautiful city. Now you got people living on sidewalk in front of business and restaurants and hotels. It looked like a war zone. And the only time they ever cleaned it in the last 10 years was when the premier of China came to visit, so they had to clean the street up. And after he left, everything went back to normal. You got third world countries. You can go to a lot of third world countries today, and it looks a lot better than a lot of the city in Stockton and and LA and San Francisco. That's a shame that the most powerful, most prosperous country on earth look like a war zone. You know, we talk about immigration. That's a bad, bad thing. But somebody have to address it. But anytime you touch that, it become a powder cake issue. We're a problem. We need to find a way to fix it. Not like the last time where we encourage it and open it up and make it hard for all the Americans who work hard for this country. I saw a man who went and robbed a convenience store, and the clerk just gave him a few dollars and he said, "That's all I got." He gave the money back to the clerk. They called the police and came arrested him. They asked him why you robbed him. He said, "My daughter needs surgery. I just needed a few $100 and I didn't have it." You have an American person that live and die here, that work in the system, and he had to go rob a store so he can get surgery for his daughter. And you putting illegal immigrant in five-star hotel, and you cater to them, and you don't see anything wrong with that. We have a problem. You know, Charlie was a student of history. If I know anything about Charlie, I know he reads and he loved to read. You know, from what I see of him, and I'm like that. I love to read because I need to know what's going on in my world. And Charlie did that. That's why they can't debate Charlie. No muffin head with narcissistic behavior going to go up against one of the most brilliant self-taught man in America. You can't debate Charlie. That's why. That's why they had to get rid of Charlie. You know, and Charlie knew. And if you're a student history, you see at the turn at the late 1800 to the early 1900, the turn of the century, the whole world was controlled by a handful of oligarchs. These men control the economy and the politics of the world. You know, they have the ability, to change nations. They have the ability to create war at will. You know, and that was the problem. And so Charlie saw that. And today we have the same problem. Not to the same degree, but we have the same problem. And I'm going to say this, and it might cost me my life, same as it did Charlie. There's one person, one evil person, that hates Charlie Kirk and people like us. And I want you to look him up. His name is George Soros. And he has an organization called the Open Society. In the last few decades, he has spent over $38 billion. He has spent money to overthrow countries, destabilize society, promote destruction of conservative values. No bail for criminal, socialist, and communistic ideology. If you look at the people he supports, Gavin Newsom, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, Stacey Abrams, a lot of congressmen, prosecutors, and yet even presidents. In every swing state, he sent his money because he know how important it is to win the presidency. And if he doesn't like you, he has the ability to go after you. He once went after George W. Bush because he didn't like his policy. If you have a person so powerful that he can swing and sway nations in politics, you look at all these prosecution that Donald Trump went through, from Georgia to New York and to every court in the United States, who you think is behind all that? George Soros. And if he have that kind of ability and power to go after the most powerful man in the world, you think Charlie has a chance? This is evil in its most purest form. Today, money equals power. And when you have a lot of money, you have a lot of power. And America is changing. I almost gave up on it until a few years ago, until President Trump became office. Because at the rate we were going, I don't think we'll have another Republican president in my lifetime. I really don't. And I don't know, is this a temporary reprieve or not? But if we don't stand up and be Charlie's voice, we will lose this republic that many have died for. So I urge you, my fellow American, you need to stand up. Like Donald Trump did a few days ago when he designated Antifa as a terrorist organization. What's important about that is that it allowed the Department of Justice, the FBI, to look at the financial backing of these and a lot of organizations like that, allow them to look at the finance of these organizations and the impact it does to society and go after them. Not for political retribution, but for preservation of a country that is a beacon for so many around the world. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a hard task because they have money, they have law firms, and they have power. But America, you need to stand up because one day you won't be able to stand even if you want. I'm Harley Man, and this is my journey.